The Man in the Mirror, Episode 3. The evening sky was already falling as Franklin made his way through the lengthening shadows. The streets were busy, and the crowds were already gathering amidst the shops and restaurants that awaited the end of the working day. The hustle and bustle of the capital was unending, a constant barrage of noise from the passing traffic to the droning chatter of the people around him. Franklin felt invisible amidst it, just another face among hundreds, making his way gently along the worn tarmac and into yet another long boulevard dominated by a narrow stretch of parkland. What they had told him back at the blocks preyed at the edge of his thoughts. Not the nonsense of prophecy or fate, but the worry that someone was still looking for him. A flash of concern shuddered through his mind. Would they sell him out? Turn him in? He stopped and looked around, scanning the crowds for any hint of someone following him. It was impossible to be sure.
Damn it.
He pressed on, determined to try and find a way to get home. He had no money, no means to contact anyone, and the family he hoped still awaited him was still a long, long way away. His body still felt weak, but somehow he found there was still a spring in his step, a lightness to his movements that made the going easier. He still wore the torn and battered spacesuit beneath the long, dirty trenchcoat he had been given, its dark grey surface grimy enough not to warrant immediate notice. But that thought did little to settle his nerves. He glanced back again, the cold, unsettling feeling of being watched lingering at the edge of his mind. There was little to see, and it felt he drew more attention by merely stopping than he would had he simply ignored the thought. Frowning, he returned to his course.
Jesus!
The young girl stood in front of him, her defiant expression glaring up to match his shock.
You left.
I have places to go.
We helped you.
You pulled me out of the river. As soon as I get home, I'll send a donation.
Dad thinks you came to help us.
Kid, your dad is great and all, and I appreciate what he did. Truly I do. But do you really think I'm some kind of hero that you just fished them out of rivers?
No.
Exactly. Now go tell the police if your gangs are causing trouble.
Police don't care. They have enough problems to deal with without worrying about us.
You have my sympathy. Goodbye.
What about us? You're still a soldier. You're still him.
Kid, I don't know who you think this him is, but you aren't my problem, alright? Go bug someone else.
You really think you can just go back? You think they won't be watching your family?
He stopped, the realization weighing on him as he tried and failed to dismiss her warning. She was right. There was no point trying to deny it. If the military thought he was still alive, his family would be the first place they would look. He sighed, looking across the round a moment as a bus drew up nearby with a whine of brakes. He stood there, watching the passengers in their normal lives, knowing that life was gone. If he went back, he would only make them fugitives as well. The bus pulled away as he came to the grim conclusion, and for a moment he frowned as he realized a face from amidst the park was staring at him almost accusingly. Perturbed, he turned back to the young girl, who waited patiently for him to come to his senses.
You're no better off than we are now. I'm not saying you owe us, but we can help each other.
I'm not interested in helping anyone. I just want to go home.
He frowned again as he caught the sight of another face amidst the crowd staring at them, the blank and motionless expression standing out amidst the sea of smiles and scowls around it. He shuddered a little as he turned away from it, and Kayleigh seemed to notice his discomfort, turning to see the same suited man walking towards them, as though unaware of the crowd around him.
I gotta go. Take care, kid.
He turned around to keep moving, almost immediately walking into the outstretched palm of a suited man standing a foot behind him.
Sir, you needed a ride home?
Wrong guy, pal.
The suited man kept his hand in place, his almost doll-like eyes boring into Franklin's own. Everything about him seemed off. His skin too perfect, his teeth too white, the eyes too blank and lifeless. Even his voice was somehow other.
You need a ride home.
Get off me.
Franklin tried to slap the man's hand away, but the suited man twisted his limb from the blow, wrapping his fingers around Franklin's wrist and keeping his hand in place against Franklin's chest. With almost consummate grace, the man's other hand whipped over his own, his nail drawing blood. Franklin watched in horror as the suited man licked the drop of blood from his finger.
You need a ride home. Come with me. Do not cause a scene.
Fish!
The girl's shout drew the suited man's attention only for a moment, but it was enough. Franklin rammed his head forward, headbutting the man squarely and knocking him aside. Franklin wasted no time, racing through the crowds with all the speed he could muster.
The enhanced is fleeing. Close in.
The agent glared down at Kayleigh, the hate in his eyes completely at odds with the cold smile he wore. Without a word, the man turned to her, giving chase and shoving aside those unfortunate enough to be in his way. She turned, seeing another blank-faced man running up the street towards them.
Hey!
She stepped in his path, aiming to block his route. He barely noticed her. A casual sweep of his arm lifting her from her feet to throw her against the shop window beside her, with a thud of cracking glass. Franklin kept running, his pace increasing as each stride became second nature. The wind rushed past him, and the crowds mumbled in shock as he slipped between them. Each step was becoming longer, becoming almost a glide, as though he was still upon the moon and bounding through the press of London's streets. His pursuers were not as graceful, barging past the crowds with no care as to who remained in their way. He glanced back, shocked to see they were still closing on him, and more horrified to see another approaching from the long park on the other side of the road. Shouts of indignation from the crowd were replaced with screams, and he looked back in horror to see them draw long pistols from hidden holsters.
Oh, shit.
The crack of gunfire and screams of the crowd cut through his thoughts as he bounded left and right. The crowd scattered, more than a few dropping to the floor as the uncaring men in suits trampled the dead. Franklin glanced across the road, shocked as the man in the park sharply turned, leaping onto the roof of a passing taxi and using it to springboard ahead of him, barely avoiding a bus as it blew its horn in shock. The man gave no indication of care, stopping a few meters ahead of Franklin and drawing his pistol. Franklin winced, sidestepping as best he could as the first barrage of automatic shots raced towards him. He leapt aside in desperation, throwing himself into the side of the moving bus. As he watched in astonishment, the bullets fall to the ground in front of him. Without a moment's thought, he kicked himself back into a run, pushing against the bus and leaping up impossibly high over the panicked heads of the crowd on the street. The suited man kept firing, 2 more rounds whipping past him, as Franklin kicked out against the wall of the shop front ahead, leapfrogging from the wall to the bus and back again, as he found himself lifting ever higher. Adrenaline, instinct, and fear had overwhelmed any sense of shock or surprise, and he kicked out again to jump onto the roof of the bus, landing badly to roll over its surface. He clung on, looking back as the bus kept moving, trying desperately to force itself faster to get away.
Impossible.
He looked down at his chest, certain he should have been peppered with bullets. Only grazes remained and dents of dulled impacts. He winced as he sat up, realizing that though they had not punched into him, they had punched hard enough to leave bruises.
What the fuck is happening?
Before he could think further, another rain of gunfire echoed below, and a pair of thuds preceded the impossible sight of the first suited man leaping up the height of the red double-decker to land with a thud a few meters from him.
Enhanced located. You still need a ride?
What are you?
The suited man stormed forward, grabbing Franklin by the collar, and pulling him to his feet with an ease no normal man could muster. Franklin's training snapped into place, and he knocked the man's grip aside. The suited man kept attacking, punching left and right as Franklin dodged and blocked. With a roar, Franklin's own fist swept forward, slamming into the man's chest and throwing him back. The man rolled head over heels, almost falling from the bus before he punched into the roof with a loud crack.
No way.
The suited man held onto the rooftop, his fingers clasped into the wrecked metal. Slowly he stood, straightening his tie as he faced against Franklin.
You are confused, Mr. Salmon. Let us help you.
Get the hell away from me.
Very well.
The suited man stepped forward, almost uncaring of the precarious driving of the bus he stood upon, as he strode up to Franklin. Salmon braced himself, but was unprepared for the speed of the attack. His block was cast aside, and the suited man grabbed a hold of his suit to lift him into the air. With a crash of breaking metal, Franklin was slammed into the bus's roof, punching through it to land with a crash amongst the seats below. The passengers trapped there gasped in shock as he tried to pick himself up, only for the suited man to land gracefully a step or two behind him, gun in hand. Without time to think, Franklin threw himself at his assailant, wresting the gun from his hand and punching him across the face. The suited man sneered, his thin smile finally broken, before he launched a vicious side swing. Franklin dodged, the man's fist cracking into the metal post, only to snap it in half. Another punch came swinging towards Franklin's face, and he braced for the end. The punch stopped short. Franklin daring to open his eyes from his wince to see the suited man grimacing at the effort of trying to force his hand to connect. Before Franklin could recover, his attacker grabbed him with his free hand, twisting to throw Salmon with such force that he smashed through the glass windows and crashed amidst the breaking branches of the trees in the park beside them.
Come on! Move!
He forced himself to stand, all too aware of the three men rapidly closing upon him. He turned and ran, racing through the park and out the other side, almost suicidally into the road beyond and back onto the pavement. The crowd scattered from him, and he looked back to see his pursuers approaching rapidly. Desperate, he ran into the alley, panic gripping him as he realized it led to a dead end filled with refuse and filthy puddles. Pressing himself into what shelter he could find, he tried to still his breathing, to hide among the dirt and grime. His pursuers were not far behind, the three of them stopping at the end of the alley as they slowly entered, guns drawn. One stayed behind, warning the public to stay out of government business, as the other two came ever closer, their steps echoing in the dark. One of the men pulled aside the only bin to afford him shelter, exposing him to the world. He closed his eyes, trying to think of his family as he awaited the gunshot, but none came. Slowly, he opened his eyes, watching in confusion as they slowly turned away, resheathing their weapons and slipping back into the crowd.
He cannot have gotten far. Search the perimeter. Hunt him down.
Franklin said nothing for a long time, the moment stretching into silence as they finally disappeared. Astonished, he looked to his hands, seeing nothing to say why they had not seen him.
Fish?
Kayleigh,
Fish? Where? I can't see you.
I'm right in front of you.
She opened her eyes in astonishment as he emerged from the dim shadow. He had not been there before, of that she was certain.
I couldn't see you. But you were right there. You were invisible. We need to go, quick. Dad don't know what to do.